Very important for the entire project management and the entire show is you should have a single source of truth. Your data cannot change every day. You cannot have different sources to fall back upon and revise or review your plans every now and then.
In your experience, what is the approximate percentage of per square feet cost reduction a banking or retail fit out industry can expect from digitization?
Well, I'll be very candid and realistic to say that our customers have experienced 15 to 20% saving in costs across.
You put in a lot of effort and focus around standardizing the BOQs and libraries.
Yes.
What was that?
As we undertook this exercise of digitalization, we found out various contractors are putting in some of the items as per their own available criteria. And that was always going in as a deviation, get approved because there was no way out. The best part of standardizing this BOQ digitally was that it is not changeable. Two things which I can tell the audience which have worked really, really well for us in your software. One is your creation of the single source of truth. Our entire data of all aspects, everything is dovetailed into one data sheet. And the second aspect is the regular monitoring that you fetch and give it to the user end, which are available for scrutiny. And that gives a lot of confidence on the progress of the projects.
When you're saying that in a typical year, you're opening 300 branches, that's almost like opening one branch a day. At that kind of a pace of operations, there's a reasonable amount of capex and additional resources which are involved. When you have concluded your digitization, which were the areas wherein you seen the ROI up close, where it showed first and in what order it showed?
Very important for the entire project management and the entire show is you should have a single source of truth. Your data cannot change every day. You cannot have different sources to fall back upon and revise or review your plans every now and then. That will not lead anywhere. Time is money. If your last branch was opened in, say, 90 days, and this year the branch is opened in 75 days after improving processes, you save 15 solid days for the business.
So I would like to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Mr. Navinder Narang, who comes from army background, has spent 15 years with ICICI Bank and ICICI Housing Finance in multiple stints in infrastructure and facility domain. And he also published a book of his own very recently by the name Bring Your Own Shark, which is topping the charts in the self-help category. So very happy to welcome you on the webinar, sir. Glad you are here.
Thank you, Amit. It has always been a pleasure to interact with you on various occasions, and I'm aware about the excellent strides being made by RDash and your team, and happy to take this platform, which is, I think, one of the very few platforms available for this kind of work going on in the industry. Amazing, and congrats to you.
Thank you. It means a lot coming from you, sir. I know you personally for almost, I think, 3.5 years now. But a lot of our viewers may not. So may I ask you for a warm introduction from yourself?
Yes, for all the viewers who don't know me, I am an ex-army colonel from the Mahar Regiment, and I joined the army in 89. I'm born and brought up in a small town like Karnal in Haryana. And after that, I cleared my NDA and then joined the army. So army was a great, journey for me in many sense, and it provided me a new way of life. In fact, once we joined NDA, there was no looking back. There was no option to be back. Also, it was a matter of honor that we have to be there, and it was quite a change from the environs of a small town in a small convent school in Karnal, and graduating to a larger stage where you have so many people from different walks of life also joining in the same stream of profession. And that's what, brought in that mental preparedness inside me that we have to take it on. And, in those times, and especially in the North, it's a matter of honor for every family to send a Fauji. So considering that, it was a matter of izzat for me to prove myself in the domain I had chosen. And because the army profession is offered quite early in your career as far as the age goes. So I was one of the first ones in my batch, school batch also, to join a profession and start earning.
Okay.
So on multiple counts, I was having that motivation to carry on. Though the situation in front of me was quite a challenging one. Cadets who had joined NDA, they were all mostly from Sainik schools, military schools, and RIMC kind of environment where they already have honed their physical and mental abilities to an extent which is required by the army intake. So there you had to compete with these people, with these incoming, cadets, and you also had to do your own thing. In that in fact was the earliest seed sown in me of how to take on different aspects of growth in your life, how to take on challenges in your life. And it was not an easy journey. The 3 years of NDA and 1 year of IMA was full of introspection, full of training, full of blood and sweat, in the kind of training regimen we have. And also, along with that, we had academics. And in the academics also, I was very intent to choosing BSc. I don't know why. Okay. Because looking back, I would have been better off with the BA because one would have got more time to, do other things. Okay. But yes, I took on BSc, a technical side, and also that made me want to focus everywhere in the same rigor that was required.
So, sir, why it is so that, army professionals and army veterans are thriving in the entire construction and fit out and the CRE community? I see army professionals, army veterans everywhere, and they are doing exceedingly well everywhere. So, correct. What are some of the learnings from the army days that you and your peers are bringing into the corporate world?
So, as one went into the army, you realize that it is a kind of a system in itself. The strong sense of hierarchy, which creates a sense of discipline inside you. If you see on Republic Day parades, I'm sure you'll see so many regiments marching, but the way of marching, the hands movement, the legs movement, and the smartness is all same all over. You cannot distinguish between one and the other. Yeah. So that is the kind of discipline which an organization like Army brings into you. Second thing is the exposure that you get to different aspects of handling resources, handling logistics, handling teamwork. In fact, teamwork is a major aspect of your functioning always. So you have to know each other's strengths, weaknesses, and then work towards it to get the overall mission completed. Time is the biggest constraint in the army. You are never given enough time to do anything. And that is one aspect of time which comes in so handy when you're handling any major projects or major work, even outside the army. Okay. Having said that, the only aspect which perhaps requires addition once you come out of the army is the aspect of cost. Because here in the army, you are never made to worry about those costs. But yes, you have to worry about all other parameters like outcome, your quality, your speed of work, your resourcefulness, your saving on time. Everything has to be handled in the same meticulous aspect. And the best part is you are always driving each other towards the work. You cannot give excuses for work not being done.
We all have great respect for our army and its culture. And in fact, you laid out the right steps for someone to be successful coming from whatever background in this construction fit out industry, that you need to follow a strong sense of discipline, which comes from enforcing the right culture around respecting hierarchies and boundaries. So one is that. Second, you said that you need to follow your deadlines. Then you said that you need to be very collaborative and you need to keep pushing each other. So these are the key foundational traits. Extremely great work that you have done with your career so far. So when you said that, okay, these three aspects that you mentioned, the teamwork, the discipline and adherence, the respect for timeline, these three aspects became the foundation which gave you a good pedestal that made you almost fit for the job that you were taking. But what were some of the cultural shocks that you felt when you joined ICICI Bank in the infrastructure facility domain? Did you feel like an outsider, and what it took for you to adjust in the sector?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Though the industry welcomes people from the armed forces, however, the transition does provide a kind of a culture shock. The first kind of culture shock which I got was, that the absence of a structural way of working. Too much of cross team work was happening, which I was not, part of such culture earlier. In army, you have a strict hierarchy and you strict boundaries to function within, and that is with the reason, because too much of complications then spoils the plan. The plans are simple, the execution is strong. Here, the planning itself is become a complex task because so many variables are attached, including the costs and the profits and other financial variables which you know. So once that is done, you obviously have to interact and you have to consider all those parameters which are otherwise, in the army you are unaware of. That is first. Second is the absence of discipline due to the very reason that there are no strict hierarchies, number one, and there is no strict regimen of work. And because of the requirement of the employees to also fall back at home regularly and interact with their other counterparts outside, so the environment is a bit loose, and that's why the discipline is a bit less, which is a requirement of this civil, because you cannot have strict discipline all the time. So this was one thing. The third thing, which is very, very obvious, is the kind of chaos outside. Before you join the civil, it looks very something like which is actually a kind of a fear factor for many of the army people who leave. But actually, once I tasted that chaos, I started loving it.
Okay.
Because that is the true sense of life as it's available. And within this chaos, you can create so many hidden, results which are there. You can work around so many theories. You can work around so many designs to create wonderful results. And that is the reason we have so many startups coming up these days, so many things happening, and economies growing up. So all this is a result of chaos. Had there been no chaos, there would have been no outcomes like this. So I started loving this chaos, in fact. Lastly, growth is unlimited outside. You just have to aim for it, and you have to scale it up properly, and you have to have a design, and you have to have the execution capability. I think these are the things which I thought are very, very different outside. Yes, initially it was a culture shock, but as you built yourself to it, you started owning it up, you started becoming accountable for that, and you started integrating the two. That is the beauty, Once you start integrating the two and you start valuing each of the aspects of the army and then the now corporate life, you can create a wonderful cohesion, and that cohesion is what I think the industry loves.
No, that's a very interesting take actually, and also very comprehensively covered. You also mentioned that when you came in the outside world, one thing that you love about the outside world is there's no ceiling to your growth. Your growth is not limited by the number of years you put in, right? So, and you have grown yourself extremely well. If I talk about your journey with ICICI in the 15 years, I'm not sure about the stint, the role that you were joined at, but you have grown from general manager to infra and facility head. If I talk about this journey, your personal growth in the corporate world as an infra and facility leader, at what point you had a shift in your mindset from thinking project to thinking portfolio as a whole?
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting question. As you correctly brought out, this growth brings in a mindset shift. Mindset shift was exactly what I also underwent when I was in the army. I'll explain how. In the army, you start your career as an officer, as a company officer first, then you become a company commander. Till a company commander's level, your outlook is mostly tactical. You are only worried about a particular geography, a particular set of troops, a particular mission given to you. So you're worried about that only and you want to excel in that. And that's rightly so, because you are in charge of so many men, so many resources, so many kilometers of area, and you got to do your best. But when you become a battalion commander, and then you become a brigade commander, and you become a general, your area of control, your area of influence increases. And as it increases, you got to create that kind of a mindset, which you call a portfolio mindset. You're no longer looking after a small region. You're looking after entire geography, entire extent of your borders. There, I want everybody to think about Operation Sindoor. Operation Sindoor was exactly a portfolio management done so well by our leaders. On the contrary, the opposition, our enemy, they were having that project mindset. They were tactical in their outlook, they were tactical in their approach, and I'm talking strictly on military doctrine terms. So that was one major reason why we went all out, and we were in a short time of few hours, we were able to decimate the entire opposition. So bringing that thing back again. So my mind was working on creating the SOPs right, creating the all the designs correct. In that endeavor, I had to do few things. Firstly, I had to acquaint myself with the terrain. So once I joined, I knew that because I joined as a lieutenant colonel, I can't claim then to get all those perks and privileges of a lieutenant colonel or a colonel or a graduate to a brigadier. No, that is gone. Now I have to probably step down two rungs again, think back as a company commander and graduate from there, because I have to learn the trade first.
Yeah.
So there's some peculiarities of corporate functioning which I have to imbibe and have to merge with the other lot, so that they can identify with me and they can accept me slowly as a leader. And that works very well. So within a span of 6 to 12 months after my joining, I knew my whole terrain backwards. I had gone to all the branches, local trains and on autos and on foot, with the laptop bag behind my shoulder. And I used to see each and every asset myself and start asking questions. So there were certain terminologies, very, very alien to me. And I never shied to ask my project managers, "Batao kya hota hai?" Those aspects, they worked very well for people to recognize that, yeah, here is one person who comes with some strengths. He's ready now to unlearn and learn. Both the things which are very important. Unlearning your previous style, which can become a hindrance, and learning the new aspects which will become your strengths. I think this worked very well to graduate me from a project kind of a mindset to a portfolio mindset. And moment you start doing projects like interior projects or handling branches, you initially are working towards fine-tuning the processes of the branch. Once you've done that, all you have to do is put your mind to the overall context of the portfolio that you have. Start looking at the design implementation. Start looking at the deviation band which is required for that. Start looking at the intricacies of certain outlier areas, what they demand, and put them back into the design. So it is design, build, execute, learn, redesign. That chain comes fantastic, and that gradually, automatically takes your mindset from the project level to the portfolio level.
It was actually very amazing first interaction when I met you first time 3 years ago. You had such a progressive, forward-looking mindset in terms of trying new technology. You already have built so many of SOPs around how you mobilize a particular site, how do you measure the progress, how you track your entire portfolio movement, how you track all your ticketings, maintenance tickets at a single place. So you were doing a bunch of things right, and that's when we interacted, and you were, this rarely happens coming from a large corporate. You were one of our early few adopters for the RDash platform. And we have been fairly successful in this journey, if I were to call it out. I think together you have delivered with a very small team. With RDash, you delivered 500 plus branches over the last 3 years. So all this exposure of rebuilding, iterating yourself with all this forward looking mindset and with all this experience, what is the advice you would want to give to infra leaders who are starting on digitization initiative? Like, what are the first 3 things that they can do in the first 90 days so that they can, do their rollout, they can manage their portfolio with as ease as you are able to do it?
Yeah, that's a very fair ask. In fact, this is important for all professionals stepping into the project management field and the facilities field also to understand how they must start. I think the first thing which we need to imbibe is the mission clarity. Like in the defense, we have a very strong mission clarity, which is called irada. Right from top to the last person, everybody is very clear what the mission is about. So I think the mission clarity is very important in the corporate also, because unless you know why the rollout is happening, why the branches are being opened, what is the reason behind it, certain aspects which sometimes get neglected by the business end, they should not get neglected at your end. Even aspects like sourcing, correct sourcing of the property, the correct selection of the property, the BOQ of the property itself. Because the design, what is required by the business could say, okay, we want a customer lobby. That's a standard thing everywhere. But what kind of customer lobby? Does it have a customer desk also? Or does it have a lounge space? Or does it have a waiting area? Or does it have a utilities area where customers can have a cup of coffee? Or does it have a customer interaction area also? So all sorts of things come into play once you think a bit deeper. So the design element is very important, for which you need to answer the question, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So once that is clear, then the ball starts rolling. The second aspect is very important for the entire project management and the entire show is you should have a single source of truth. Your data cannot change every day. You cannot have different sources to fall back upon and revise or review your plans every now and then. That will not lead anywhere. In fact, that's the biggest worry of a lot of stakeholders. When they start a project, they are told time and again to make some changes, and that leaves everybody so frustrated. One master sheet, one data point, and you should be very clear what all data points you want to have, what all fields you want to have in the data. They should be very clear. And the third thing is, if you have not rolled out those branches or those interiors earlier, and you're doing for the first time, it's always useful to do a pilot. If you are already doing it and you go doing a second rollout, then you should ensure that the team is in place. There's the third point.
Yeah.
So the team which is required to be in place has to be in place, even if it's a vendor's team. You should be very clear that the vendor is getting the kind of resources that he requires. They're already with him, and he doesn't have to, at the last moment, start looking for them. Small little things, but they matter a lot. Of course, if the vendor's team also is in place, then the next best thing I can think of is mobilization. Your mobilization plan has to be very, very perfect. And that good beginning is always work half done. So you should make that good beginning by planning your mobilization very well. And in that mobilization, a lot of things are already involved. Your initial surveys, your interaction with the landlords, your interaction with the local compliances authorities. So all these plans have to be made very well. So these are the few things which I think everyone must consider before they start off on a project.
Yes. So you basically said, firstly, you need to be very sure of your design, why you are building, what you are building, every inch, every square feet of your design. Then you need to bring your data together, have a single source of truth on entire operations. And then you need to assemble a right team. And when you're saying team, you are also mentioning that you need to establish trust amongst your suppliers. And then your mobilization planning has to be done right. So these are the four key aspects that you stated are sort of the foundation for the seamless rollout of branches that you are doing at such an astounding pace. Also, if I had to ask you what KPIs or metrics that you like to measure on your portfolio in a typical year, like in a typical year, if you want to share a number, how many branches you generally roll out, and at that volume, what metrics matters to you the most?
Yeah, so any banking or financial organization or a fast-growing retail, they normally undertake 200, 300 branches in a year. That kind of a scale is all there. And when you have this kind of a scale, your overview or oversight has to be very strong on a few parameters. So I would say the first parameter is the speed of work. That is very, very essential, especially in businesses where every day loss matters in revenue, and every day saved is a revenue added. So speed of work is immensely important. Second, of course, becomes the cost. The capex and opex both included. Generally, I've seen as a traditional measure, people only worry about capex and get the budgets sanctioned and they go as per that. And sometimes they make some kind of unwise decisions in selection of the material, in procurement, and in kind of a design also. And not realizing that some of these aspects can cost a high OPEX later on. So that realization has to be made at that time and at scale. And if you do it well, you will be able to save immense costs for your company, not only in capex, and if not in capex, then definitely in opex, which is
It ties to the first point you said, like know the why of your project in and out of every design, every inch of the design, every specification. Now that makes a lot of sense. When you're saying that in a typical year, you're opening 300 branches, that's almost like opening one branch a day, right? At that kind of a pace of operations, there's a reasonable amount of capex and additional resources which are involved. So when you approach digitization, when you have concluded your digitization, which areas where the ROI showed up first? Like, was it around the capex control? Was it on the cost reduction? Was it around reducing the OPEX? Was it around speed to launch, or was it around the compliance? So which were the areas wherein you seen the ROI up close, where it showed first, and in what order it showed?
So before I start with the ROIs, there are two aspects more to be mentioned in the success matrix of the digitalization projects. Okay. One is the reliability factor, the resilience which is measured. Mm-hmm. And you look after the audit compliance also, you look after the optimization of infra matters also. And the second thing is the experience. People don't include experience as one of the parameters for success. I think that's one of the biggest parameters of success. Coming on to the ROI sequence, the first step definitely is the capex, okay. The capex savings. Because if you plan for a particular capex and you are ensuring that becomes the number one ROI for you, readily available as a reference point. The second point is the speed of launch, because time is money. If your last branch was opened in, say, 90 days, and this year the branch is opened in 75 days after improving processes, you save 15 solid days for the business. And business starts 15 days earlier. You can imagine that much time saved for money getting into the coffers. A third sequence point is the OPEX and energy saving. Because once the premise is ready, it has to start performing. And if the performance doesn't lead to cost savings, then you're not doing your enough. And the last point is the compliances, risk mitigation. So these points also are important because in each geography, there are some regional considerations to be made. The signages, size which is permitted, the local compliances in terms of having a DG or not having a DG, having security inbuilt into your complex, having CCTVs externally also provided because of police regulations, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So these ROIs are in terms of the compliance ROI, by the way, is a hidden ROI. If that is not done, it will hit you as a cost later on. And it's also hit your reputation. So sometimes these things are avoided for saving those sundry costs, but not realizing that the cost of not doing this will be heavier later.
Yeah. And because you put capex first, basically you said that digitization help you reduce per square feet cost of fit out. In your experience, what is the approximate percentage of per square feet cost reduction a banking or retail fit out industry can expect from digitization?
Well, I'll be very candid and realistic to say that ourselves have experienced 15 to 20% saving in costs across, maybe not in one side, maybe not in two sides, but when you're doing things at scale, you're also doing procurement at scale. You're also doing your measuring of your progress at scale. You're having those dashboards available. You're saving on resources available. Your human resources are saved. Your decision making is faster. So all those things put together, the time, the cost, and the quality, all aspects, and the compliances, if you see everything together, 15 to 20% saving is definitely on, especially in the first few years. Once you streamlined everything, then of course, minimum 5 to 10% savings will accrue year on year, even after you've done, because every time you improve some processes in doing digitalization.
Oh, that's a Very encouraging number. In fact, in the last webinar as well, we were speaking with gentleman Mr. Nikhil. He also shared the similar number that his company GCID saved 15 to 20% by implementing RDash in their fit out operations. So I think that is almost getting reinforced with your remark. Also, in our early interaction, we've seen that you put in a lot of effort and focus around standardizing the BOQs and libraries.
Yes.
What was that?
That's very interesting. As we undertook this exercise of digitalization, we found out various contractors are putting in some of the items as per their own available criteria and not by a standard requirement criteria. And that was always going in as a deviation and get approved because there was no way out and used to get implemented. However, when you looked at it in retrospect, you found there were a lot of inconsistencies resulting in design issues and resulting in outcome issues, experience issues. So to ensure that we have a uniform experience everywhere, we needed to standardize this kind of a BOQ. The best part of standardizing this BOQ digitally was that it is not changeable. And it goes to the vendors also in the same digital form. They have to accept, they have to include it in their procurement, and they have to give evidence of this procurement to you. And so, because the processes of which your tool has provided, it also ensures that these processes are ingrained in the path or workflow, that the evidence provided is recorded and the progress of using them is recorded. And you have photographic evidence, you have geotagged assets, and later on these assets are also QR coded by us. So we done a kind of a 360-degree cycle of ensuring that there is sanctity built into the entire process. And that gives us the confidence that the digitalization of BOQ itself creates the kind of experience at the end. So you have short-circuited so many inconsistencies in between which were there earlier.
No, that's actually very well put. Before, I would also want to stress that, especially for banking and retail fit out, standardizing BOQs and libraries is the way to go, because then you can put your vendor rate cards behind it, you can put your quality control behind it, you can put your reconciliation behind it. It streamlines almost the entire effort, and it's streamlining the BOQ and following the process behind the BOQ is almost, as you said, half the job done.
Yeah, because, I'll just add one point. Since I'm also handling ESG and we have started giving these things as ESG reports also. So once there is any query on an ESG disclosure, supposing on the kind of material you're using, the audit trail is so readily available because you have hard-coded this in your BOQ. So there's no question that anybody would have a doubt and the evidence is not showing. So all this figures very well in the long term.
Also, because you brought up the topic of audit readiness, how did you embed the goal of audit readiness in your digitization effort without actually slowing down the deliveries? Because you think so much about, doing the compliances and documentation right, and it creates an extra burden for the team. They started feeling negatively about it, and the whole initiative goes down to the drain. But you seem to have balanced it really well. So can you share with our viewers that how did you embed the audit readiness without slowing down the retail rollout that you were doing?
Yeah, I think this again goes back to my mindset developed in the military, because there all these compliance requirements or all these important considerations have to be dovetailed in your plans. You cannot think about them after you are going to the enemy, charging on the enemy objective. You have to build every such thing in your own plan. So similarly, like we have the audit requirements of energy. So we have already hard coded, say, 1,000 square feet of an area. How many ACs will give us that kind of a reliability of energy savings? Or we should not go overboard in planning the ACs. That is one aspect I'm mentioning. Similarly, the aspects of lighting. The lighting has to be adequate, but it also has to be comfortable. Then regarding access control systems itself. So your audits always ask when the employees are punching in or punching out, or which are the employees which are sitting late, to ensure that thing is already built into your plan of interiors. Imagine the kind of load it is saving the post-occupation processes. Nobody has to then thereafter sit and find out manually what is going on. It is already inbuilt. Similarly, your CCTV plan, your communications plan, whether you're going to have a VCs, how many VCs are being planned, and all those VCs, whether they have to be, secured in some manner. So all those securing of the VCs or the protocols, they have to be inbuilt in the planning itself. And that gives you the kind of leverage to negotiate well in advance and create the kind of outcome possible within the given budget. If you miss them out in the beginning by not involving them in your plans, you can run into rough weather later. And then at that stage, either you run out of your budget limits, or you are not able to negotiate well in time, or you're able to only do patchwork. And that patchwork will cost you much more than it would have done earlier.
So basically, you're saying that you need to have that mindset of planning, having a coherent plan considering all factors, and you can use technology, a digital space to maintain your audit trail, so that when the auditor asks the right kind of question, you can demonstrate it with certain amount of data.
And absolutely.
Yeah. Also, driving this kind of an effort at that kind of a scale, wherein you are having efficiency goals, you are having time goals, you are having audit goals. Sometimes these efforts are seen as a lot of extra legwork for your team, which is actually pulling the cart on ground, right? Digitization also sometimes is seen in a negative light in our industry, wherein excessive transparency is not so good for projects, is generally the understanding. It's true also to a certain extent. So how did you navigate those tricky waters? How did you convince your team to come on board in this entire plan? Because now when I look right now, things looks all rosy. But in the beginning, how did you do it? I know for sure one thing that you did right, and I'll share it with our viewers as well, that you asked us to deploy one person on your premise permanently to handhold the digitization, and we took it as actually a best practice, and we are now doing it all across our customer spectrum, especially the enterprise ones. So, but apart from having a dedicated resource from your technology partner, what else did you do on ground? What rituals you did drive? What reviews you conducted? What did you do to drive this change in such a seamless manner?
That's again put my mind back, and that's why I was smiling, when I was thinking of those days. Changing mindset is the first thing which you have to try as a leader. Whenever you speak about such new ideas to your team, you'll always find a couple of takers, a couple of people. I'm saying in a team of say 8 to 10, couple of takers, 3-4 people who will keep quiet, and 3-4 people who will say outrightly it's not possible within the time frame, or they'll give some excuses to how it cannot be implemented. Yeah. Well, in that case, you have to be one up against them. You have to have some kind of case studies ready with you. So we had case studies of some organizations who had gone through the digital process and how they had helped. Number 2, your own audit reports of the past can be a big tool. In our case, that was one big help, because all the previous audit observations were so flatly available on our face, and we were not able to do anything about them. So once you confront your team and tell them, look, these are the audit observations and how they can be reduced or nullified by just getting some simple processes into place. Alongside, you have to start training your people, introducing them. Even now, today's scenario also, a lot of companies, the employees who are into facility management or project management, not all of them are exposed to the same level of digitalization. So that, I would say, is one of the primary responsibilities of all leaders, to ensure that the minimum basic level of digital awareness is available to those people. Now, certain awareness is always there. Like today, everybody's on ChatGPT. That is not the kind of digital awareness I'm talking about. The kind of digital awareness I'm talking about is related to your profession, related to project management, related to facility management. And that is where they have to be practically on board with things which matter to them. For example, a person who is in charge of rolling out branches, if he's made aware about how digitalization will help you, I think he will be the best person to acknowledge that kind of knowledge, or learn from that. These things will help a long way in getting people on board. And that's how I went ahead. Once we introduced things step by step, that was the next point. You cannot introduce digital tools all in one go. That will create a lot of complication. That will create kind of fear, and people will start coming with evidence why things are not working.
Yeah.
And moment you have some people coming out with evidence, ये तो काम ही नहीं करता, ये तो चलता ही नहीं है, and that kind of a negative vibe spreads easily.
Yeah.
So before that happens, you introduce things one by one and ensure your worst problem or your major problem is handled first. Get something to handle your first problem. Like in our company, we had major problem of assets physical verification when we started the journey in ICICI Home Finance Company, not in the bank. So in ICICI Home Finance Company, this was the problem. So we needed some solution around it. So though the digital solutions were available for all kinds of scenarios, but we chose to go with a particular vendor who also had this as a primary solution.
Yeah.
So once we created that evidence, we got the buy-in of not only the colleagues in the department, but also of the finance team, of the other teams. They could see value, even the compliance team. And then rolling out other modules of the same software was not a difficult journey.
Yes, that's a very good hack that you just spilled. In fact, last question on infrastructure and portfolio management, and then I would want to talk about your book as well a little bit. What advice you would want to give to leaders, your peers in the industry who are managing similar volumes of, let's say, 50 to 300, 400 rollouts in a year? What kind or what category of dashboard they should monitor and measure to not miss a beat on their expansion plans?
So in this, there are various views I have. May not be touching in the correct sequence, so pardon me for that. But as I'm thinking, the first thing is never exclude any stakeholder out of the digital plan that you are having of running a project. When I say stakeholders, it means the external stakeholders like vendors. They have to be part of the digital journey, because if they are not part of the digital journey, they will do some standalone processes which will not merge or integrate with your processes, and that will be a whole kind of confusion after that. Along with that, some internal stakeholders also need to be dovetailed. You'll be surprised that we have started dovetailing even the HR people, the compliance people into our digital journey slowly, because the HR is required, because they know exactly how many people or which roles are going to sit in that premises, and what kind of cabins or what kind of workstations are to be made for each kind of a role. So that design is very important. At the same time, the progress of the interiors has to match with the progress of recruitment if it's a new rollout. Similarly, the compliance part, they have to be assured that all the compliances for that premises are being looked into. So if that assurance is right at the beginning and these people are part of the journey, you won't have problems running into later on and having to rework at things again. So this is my first thing, is that you should take everybody along. Second thing is never get overawed by the kind of digitalization which exists in the market.
Yeah.
Look at what you want. Do a brainstorming with your team. Try and take out your own requirements. Try and brainstorm with the vendor. Now, here's again, I will tell by example, you know it, how we brainstorm with each other. Never consider vendor an external resource or somebody who's alien to your own processes. Yeah. If you're doing a project, your vendors are going to be part of it. And better to, incorporate their ideas, their suggestions also at times, and also win them over with your suggestions and ideas. So sometimes I've seen a lot of vendors are reluctant to join the process, the digital process, which you also experienced with us, Amit.
Yeah.
But as you coerced them, gave them demonstrations, introduce them to your digital partner, and make them practice a few times, join them in the journey where they are having the pain points, trying and improve them. That is a crucial element of your digitalization. That journey will not be successful unless you do these things. And lastly, which I told you earlier also, I'll amplify again, everybody needs to be on board with the skill sets required. Yeah. If people have to be brushing on their Excel skills, they should do that. If they have to be system-oriented processes, they have to learn that. They also have to know the processes as they exist on paper. Digitalization doesn't mean that things which are on paper need to be neglected. In fact, they have to be integrated very well. Yeah. And along with that, you have to create a kind of experience for the customers. So even things like your understanding about the net promoter score, whether your project teams understand these aspects or not. So having interactions with the business as to what the business considerations are once they start occupying the premises, whether you're really catered for all that, and have those things being dovetailed into the digital process or not. And it's a gradual journey. Never expect 100% results from a digital solution on the first instant. You will have to work on it, and make it more and more practical as customized to your solution.
No, that makes total sense, and that's very, very well answered. Now, I also want to talk about a little bit about the book, Bring Your Own Shark. In the book, you described different kind of characteristics that different kind of sharks bring, and how a human can unpackage those shark tendencies to excel in their day-to-day endeavors or their life goals.
Thought I'll take out the book from my bag and show it to people. So
So
yeah,
guys,
so
what we will do is after this webinar, we are going to circulate a form. Whosoever wants to buy this book, RDash will sponsor that book. So please do buy and read. It's an extremely well written book. I have read it personally. I found it very helping, very, very helpful.
So a bit of background how this book got into shape. It was my own personal journey after joining the corporate. I saw that a lot of managers are struggling in the mid level because whatever impetus for growth they had earlier, that has been absorbed already. And they are actually not figuring out well as to how do they get to the next level of growth. वो क्या करते हैं गलती से, they start comparing themselves to others, number one. They start copying others' journey, number two. They start doubting their own purpose in life. They don't understand it properly because everybody is on a different path of growth. And their confidence and their own abilities gets a bit diluted because either they have not trained themselves very well in between, or they have lost time in doing something else which probably is not yielding results. So they are caught in a lot of traps. And it was my realization that unless you realize what challenges to seek in life, you cannot find your growth. Yeah. In fact, it takes me back to the army life. In army, you're able to grow in various dimensions because the challenges are thrown in front of you. It's a structured system. The system knows what challenges to give you to grow that officer out of you. Whether it's training, whether it's your postings, whether it's your missions, whether it's your practices, your firings, your physical endurance runs, they know how to hone you and train you and make you capable to deliver and then grow in that journey. However, outside, this kind of system is not available. Let's face it.
Yeah.
If it's not available, then who's to do it? Who's the biggest stakeholder in the whole thing? It's yourself. So unless you figure it out, things are not going to happen. And then you know what? Luckily, I came across this very interesting story of Japanese fish tank, where the Japanese are very fond of fish and they require fish to be as fresh as possible. So the fishermen tried their best to get fresh fish by putting those freezers. That didn't work. Then they put fish tanks, big, large fish tanks in the boat's hull, where they get fishes who are already swimming in water and they get them ashore. So they are live. But that also didn't work because the fish became lethargic. They lost their agility while coming in the fish tank. So somebody had the bright idea to put a small shark behind the fish. So the shark made the fish agile again inside the tank. But this agility, in my reference point, as related to humans, not making enough money, all those fears sometimes make us take wrong decisions and bring wrong challenges to our life. So shark तो आ गई, लेकिन वो गलत shark है, and that shark takes you to a wrong direction which you never wanted to reach in. So the idea was how to bring that shark which you want into your own life.
Bring the right shark out.
Yeah, and that luckily led me to doing a research on the subject, and I found there are more than 500 sharks species, and each shark species has its own different behavior. So I chose 9 different sharks which exemplified 9 different behavior traits for leaders, and it's very interesting. For example, you have a mako shark, which is the fastest shark in the ocean. So people who need to make fast decisions need to learn from the shark how it does that.
On this front, let me ask you one question, and that's the final question from my side. If you have to, like in the Bring Your Own Shark book style, if you have to give a practical exercise to infra leaders who are watching this conversation, that what shark that they need to bring out to that career growth advancement and get to that digitization milestone that they have always planned in their head. So what shark would you request them to bring out and how it will manifest in their day-to-day life?
That's a difficult question, let me tell you. Because, once you read the book, you realize each shark brings you a different value which you can implement even as a facility manager. And not only a shark, I have a special hidden chapter of another species, which people will, discover once they read the book. But having said so, in the overall scheme, I think one shark, it appeals to me very, very well. And that's the black tip shark.
Okay.
I could have told you the great white shark, which is the biggest shark, or the bull shark, which is the shark of perseverance. But why did I choose the black tip shark? Because the black tip shark, it owns the space where it is swimming. It doesn't allow anybody else to come there. And it takes accountability of the entire, environment. So as facility leaders, as project managers, we have to be taking accountability of our roles, accountability of our departments, of our small teams, of our journey of learning, of our resources available, of our SOPs. Once you're taking ownership and accountability, I think everything flows out automatically.
That's great insight. I think I will also research more about this one. I'll also refer to the book again on the shark specifically, but that's a very relevant characteristic for infra and fit out leaders to hone. So this is all from my side, all the things that I have been planning to ask you. Some question that some of the viewers have logged in. Let me just have a look at them. Okay, so this one is interesting. This is asked by Mr. Sibashankar Pal, who is from Twashit Furniture Private Limited. So the question is, how can we introduce technological system in a non-technology company? In a traditional setup, how do you, what are the initial few steps you take to introduce a tech system?
Very relatable question because, Amit, when we started ICICI Home Finance Company, it was from zero.
Yes.
And the same thing applied at that time also. So I think just recapitulate what I said earlier also. In your journey within your company, there will be some very, very low hanging fruits because we have to be very sure that what we are asking for. Because with that ask, you will go to your CFO ultimately to get the budget allocated. And the CFO and the business team have to see some value in that. So the first thing to do is choose those few things which are affecting the company and which are also related to your department. Like in our case, it was the physical asset verification audit reports which were hitting us. And that gave me the opportunity to get a physical asset verification software module installed. So the first thing to do is identify these low-hanging fruits or the problems, major problems which are being faced, which are affecting the business. It could be workstation related, it could be premises related, it could be procurement related. Your costs of procurement are getting very high, you need to control that. So wherever you see an opportunity which is a joint problem, that is the first way to hit. And from that, you take on the next problem, which is dealing in the next problem. And slowly, once you build 2-3 aspects of your functioning into a digital process, you realize the business teams are now looking at you. What next? And that is the time to grab the larger share of your department, which you are convinced about that this will get me the ROI which my company deserves to get.
That's again very well answered. Actually, what you are saying is don't unleash this technology bulldozer on all your process to level all your process. Just move around with a small hammer and put the hammer at the right places where you get noticed, wherein everybody will support you. And from there, you reel in the thread and you digitize the whole thing together.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, let me ask you a question. Amit, what made you to undertake such a step to get in this software for the project managers and for the interior projects, which was actually a blue ocean as far as I know, and a lot of risks involved. I'm sure you would have seen those.
Yeah.
What gave you the conviction to get into this domain?
So, sir, as you know that we did not start with the software right away. We started with the vision to build a full stack offering wherein we will do the construction ourselves and the technology will be the backbone which will digitize the entire supply chain. We were thinking about we'll digitize procurement, we'll digitize project management, we'll have a congruent way of working amongst our suppliers base so that we can have a very low touch resource allocation on the projects, and we can be cost competitive for our customers. So we started with that kind of a technology vision for a full stack design build operations. But while we were into doing this operations, we realized that there does not exist a technology which brings multiple pieces of projects together. Like we say that in project there are four foundational pieces. One is design, project, procurement, and finance. These are the four key teams which are the pillar to any project success. And then there are a lot of other support teams as well. There's QS, there's billing, there's sales, there's a bunch of other teams as well. But these four key teams, design, project, finance, and procurement, they need to bring together and collaborate on a same place, on a same data source. They can't be operating on a different data source. And if these guys are working on a different data source, then you are always dealing with wastages, leakages, errors, mistakes, delays, and all these bad things that can go wrong in a project. This was happening with us as well. We explored a lot of tools outside. We could not find a right software which is adequate for small scale project construction industry. So then what we ended up doing is we tried stitching the whole process together by buying a lot of disconnected softwares and connecting them around. But also that also started breaking apart after a certain level of depth. And that's when we said, okay, this is never going to work. We have to build it ourselves. And that's where we dived into doing it with our full might. 2 years out, we built the initial version of the software. We tested it on ground with 91. We had initial success. So we are fairly confident that this makes sense for the sector. And when we started launching it, it took us about 6 months to land it right, because outside perception of a tool which is developed by a company for in-house operations is, you tend to miss out a few things which are very important, which you helped us refine, and some of our initial customer helped us refine in the early days. And from there, it has been a very exciting journey. We have been interacting at least on those levels, so can't complain. Everything turned out really well.
Two things which I can tell the audience which have worked really, really well for us in your software. One is your creation of the single source of truth. Our entire data of all aspects, not even leaving out the pre-sourcing or the sourcing parameters, the legal parameters, everything is dovetailed into one data sheet under your module. And the second aspect is the regular monitoring that you afford, and the kind of reports you fetch and give it to the user end, which are available for scrutiny. And that gives a lot of confidence on the progress of the projects.
Thank you so much, sir, for appreciation. I was reading the question, so I could not pay the right attention. But I know for certain that, these kind of initiatives, they can always, it's a slippery slope. You find some of early handholders and it becomes a, success story. And if you don't land the right customer at the right time, you end up losing momentum and it never becomes anything. So you have an important contribution to play in whatever RDash has become and what is going to become. Thanks to you likewise.
I'm humbled. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you so much for having Mr. Narang here to do this with us. I actually logged in to understand more about RDash and systems and processes, but I think I took away a lot about life lessons as well. So thank you. And I really look forward to reading your book, Mr. Narang. So actually the question I had was, so I am head of department here for systems and processes at an interior and architecture firm in Mumbai. We have just started, integrating our system with RDash. We just started it. So I know it's a very different scale from what you were operating. We have a lot of people who work on site who are kind of, technologically challenged as well. And I really like your idea about ruling out the problems step by step. And I think going forward, I think it would make sense for me to make a roadmap based on for each department, what is the first step they can do with this software. But I just wanted to know, how did you manage to introduce this particular digitization to people who are more technologically challenged? How do you do that? Is it better to have one person of contact who can, work with them on a daily basis? Or is it something that, we just do a mass training sort of a thing, purely just from understanding how we can integrate this successfully?
Thank you, Parimala, for your question, and thanks for your interest in the book. Coming to your question, my advice would be to look for the people in your team who have the natural affinity for learning all this, and make them the early adopters for the processes end to end. And they could be the linchpins for your getting this entire roadmap working. But you don't need to do the same thing with all the rest of the people. I would say do it department wise or do it role wise and see
Okay.
what processes are important for that role to understand. As you implement RDash, you will realize that that portion of RDash will only get activated as a trigger once the previous actions are done, and that role has to now perform its actions, either approval or uploading or downloading and or certifying, putting some comments or putting some remarks or rejecting or forwarding certain things. So all these steps are built in naturally from the offline processes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once you understand how the offline processes are going to integrate here, you have to build the pathways for them to imbibe and understand and own those kind of roles.
Got it.
And they need to be then educated only on those particular roles in the beginning,
Okay.
right? But yes, there are certain stakeholders who need to be educated on all aspects. Perhaps your IT team, a couple of people should be there as kind of supporters for this journey, and there should be somebody earmarked on a long-term basis.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Narang. Thank you so much.
That's also a great insight. That's how it should be done. Actually, that's what we try to discuss in most of the deployment calls. But thank you for reinstating it here as well, sir. I think it's almost, we are 20 minutes over time. We could not keep a track of time. It was such an interesting conversation. Thank you for taking time out, Navinder sir. I'm sure you are keeping quite busy with the book launch and with all that is going on with your career. Is I think you are definitely bringing your own shark out. That I can say with certainty.
Thank you for saying that.
Hope to keep working closely with you as we have done in the past. It's been a lovely experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you everyone for joining in, and we'll share the recording as soon as it is out from production.